What are some other lethal means? Because I think that seems like a redundant term to a lot of cynics. That it's like, well, obviously, if you died from it, it was lethal. But like, what are we talking about here? I think the obvious ones are, guns, ropes, sharp objects, pills. Right? But what are
Yeah.
we maybe not considering that people can think of if they're listening, maybe struggling themselves, or they have a loved one who is, or they got a surly teenager who's fallen into depression.
Well, another one that we found that's relevant to talk about is it's under this technical term and broad term of built environment or high structures. Um, it's maybe jumping from high places, but we know there's applications of lethal means safety there. For example, when we put in safety measures around bridges, we learn that lives are saved. And this is where that myth of suicide is not preventable comes in.
Right.
A lot of people say, well, won't they just find another bridge? And the answer to that is no. Typically, the way that it plays out and the research shows that if you address a primary lethal means and you implement safety measures, you save lives and other mechanisms aren't employed or engaged.
Right. That's your 90% survivor rate.
Yeah,
And I don't know,
exactly.
I don't really know, maybe you can help because I want to be mindful of time and honor your time too. I know you got to get out of here, but I don't necessarily know what constitutes a failed attempt. Is it walking to the bridge, seeing that there's a fence and deciding not to? Like, is that considered an attempt, or is that just strong contemplation,
Yeah, so because of questions like that and getting into deciphering and parsing the words so much, and how maybe that can get away then from the point, I think you'll see a broader term a lot of times used, which is suicidal behaviors.
Okay.
And that then helps you to understand that anything that fits under suicidal behaviors is something to pay attention to. It's something to be aware of, and it's something to think in terms of prevention, intervention, and postvention with regard to.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But to that point though, if people who attempt suicide and fail, and we all love a failed suicide attempt, kind of like we all love a failed divorce, they're 90% chance, they have a 90% chance of dying some other way, not by suicide. And that's wonderful. And that speaks to your point about, we don't necessarily know what works for every individual person, but we can certainly make efforts to save as many lives as possible.
Yeah, and something that we see as thematic across that 90% population, those who have the lived experience, there's very commonly the report that there was a sense of regret almost immediately, and looking back on it, then they're so glad that they're alive and that they're able to grow from their experience and to help others grow from their experience. So capturing that lived experience and sharing that that sense of regret, that sense of what did I do, and how others can learn from that, I think is a really important part of the prevention process as well.
That's really awesome. And I do a lot with emotional functioning. And so you're talking about shame and guilt there, right? And, I teach from a guy named Carol Izard's work, and the adaptive function of shame is to let you know that you failed to meet somebody's expectations, meaning you cause sadness in another person. Then guilt says, go fix it, go make it right, make atonement. And I think there's a large portion of society now that says we just need to get rid of shame and guilt. Just no one should feel bad about anything, and we should just protect everybody and from these feelings. And you just illustrated right there a very critical use, like a very positive critical use of shame and guilt, which is to go, holy cow, I could have caused a lot of pain here, and I don't want to do that to my loved ones, my friends. And it's corrective. It becomes adaptive so that you can move forward in life. Go, I don't ever want to go through that again, and I don't want to cause harm to others. So I want to make sure that we're paying heed to the emotional functioning there. It says, no, this is a good thing. Like we don't just want to sweep shame and guilt away from society. There is a use here for it. And that's one powerful one right there.
Right. Gets
yeah,
back to Jake, what you were saying about social media. It's a tool. Is it used for a disorder, or is it used for growth? It can be used for growth.
Yeah, absolutely. As we wrap up here, one thing that I have been doing lately with these podcast episodes is I'm borrowing from something I do in supervision in my sessions and whatnot. Is I ask I go around and I say, what's one thing that you're taking away from today? It's something that jumps out at you or whatever. But with the guests on the podcast, I don't want you to take something away because you're my guest. What I want you to do is leave something. So I would ask you, what is one thing that you would like the audience to crystallize, to take away from this that you think is really important? Maybe an exhortation or just a highlight or some cool stat or something like that. What would you leave our audience?
I would offer the same thing that I take from this, and that is a reminder as you walked me through my own life and my own development, that everyone has a role to play within suicide prevention. We all have experiences. We all have points of expertise in areas where we're not expert. Suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention is not restricted to certain persons, certain experiences, certain professions. We all have a role to play. And sometimes it just starts with the simple role of reaching out to the person right next to you and saying, what can I do? How are you doing? Sometimes it starts with simply looking inside of yourself and saying, am I going to take this step or not? It's time to make a decision.
Right.
So I guess I would offer the same challenge that I have lived through and I'm living through, and that is find your role, take the step, and everyone has a role.
That's beautifully put. I could not have concluded it any better. So thank you. Dr. Matt Miller, PhD of the Veterans Administration, currently the permanent director, at least permanent until he decides to do something else, of the Suicide Prevention Program for VA. I really appreciate you coming on. This is basically, I think, at least your second time, at least virtually traveling to Nevada. As I understand it, you came here in January and gave our governor a certificate for becoming the 8th state to participate in the Governor's Challenge Program. I appreciate you. Love what you're doing. Glad we met back in February in San Francisco. And I can't wait till we meet in person again.
Always a pleasure, and really a pleasure as well working with the Nevada team with the Governor's Challenge and the great work that they're doing, and the discussions they're having about things like lethal means safety applied to the states and the communities they're in. So great work there as well, and always nice talking to you, Jake.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm actually on one of those calls this afternoon, about 1 p.m. my time, and Kim Donahue says to say hi.
Tell Kim I said hello, please.
I will. Thank you. And on behalf of the Noggin Notes team and the Zephyr Wellness family, we wish you all great mental wellness. Take care.